Developers, welcome. We're going to talk now about functions. To date, so we're going to open the folder 10 functions, the first file in there, 100-functions. To date, we've been talking about variables, okay? So variables are kind of like the nouns, the objects that we deal with. So whether it's a person object, right? There's a person object or maybe it's just a simple message that would be hello world. Here are two nouns, right? Two things that essentially just sit there in memory and wait for us to work with them. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to work with functions. We're going to learn how to write functions over the course of the next series of videos, and we're going to start out by just declaring a function. And here's the basic syntax for declaring a function. A function being a chunk of code that is going to be wrapped up in such a way that is going to be packaged for us to be able to reuse it. So functions are a very fundamental building block of software development. You can think about them as little tools or widgets that we're going to build so that we can reuse them. So like a hammer, right? So you use a hammer, it's not just a thing, it's a tool that you can bring to any particular work site and have it do the thing that it does, right? So whatever tool it is that we build, it's going to have a specific purpose. And that tool, we're going to be able to reuse it time and time again, okay? So it's a chunk of code. So for example, in the past, we might have said console.log message, right? And if we were to run this, it'll essentially just log message one time, right? In fact, let's go do that now. We'll open up the live server. And here comes our console log message in a second. We're going to see that in the console, we have a hello world message, right? That's all it does. Hello world. I can't get this to run and say hello world again though, because there's no way for me to re-invoke this without me refreshing the entire page. So what I would say is that, hey, I actually want to, I want to reuse this code, and I want to be able to fire and invoke this code whenever I'd like. So if I want to reuse this code, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it in a function declaration. And the function declaration is simply the keyword function and then a name, right? So very similar to how we declare a variable, where we have this keyword followed by a name. Instead of saying var, we simply say function. Then we throw an open close parentheses and then an open close curly bracket. If you want to see this on one line, you can go ahead and see this, because this, in a nutshell, is all you need to declare a function. The function keyword, say hello, open close parentheses, and open close curly brackets. The parentheses we're going to learn about in another video where we define parameters to this function. Right now, the curly brackets, this is the function block, the code block. Here's where we get to describe the instructions, the code that we want to run every time this function gets invoked. And so we'll see now how this gets represented in our graph. Instead of seeing message being displayed directly in the graph, instead of seeing hello world output in the console, we see nothing in the console. But we do see that the graph has picked up this function that's called say hello. It gives it a name. It gives it this specific suffix at the end around a box that's supposed to signify function, fx for function. Notice there's no little curly brackets for object. There's no square brackets for array. It is a function. So say hello is the name of a function. Now, how do we get this function to actually run? It's kind of like the console log message. Here's the console log message. We've been using the console log message throughout this course. The console log function, you have to name the function that you want to run. So we have to say hello. And if I want to run it, if I want to execute it, so this is one of the things that gets really confusing. And I'll write out some notes for you. If I want the function to run, right? So if I want the function to run, or you want to say run the function, that's the same thing as saying call the function. That's the same thing as saying execute the function. That's also the same thing as saying execute the function, call the function, run the function, invoke the function. So here we are defining the function. Let me collapse it. Here it is, we are defining it because we have the function keyword, we have the open close parentheses, we have the open close curly brackets. The function body starts on line 28 and it ends on line 31. Everything within inside of it are the instructions or the code that's going to run within the function. Here it is, us declaring the function. If I wanted this code to run, I could say this to you in a number of different ways. I could say run the say hello function. I could say call the say hello function. I could just say call say hello. I could say execute say hello. I could say invoke say hello. Okay? Either way, in software development, and when you're talking to a software developer, they might say any one of those things. And what they mean for you to do is to write out the function, open close parentheses, and let it go. Hit enter, and you'll see that now the hello world is firing. What that looks like, again, if I hit refresh on the screen and let the page load up again, we'll notice that the say hello function is recognized, but the content inside of the function has not yet run. We can see that the function has not yet run because there's no log message here. But what I'm going to do on line 36 now is I am going to invoke, right? And notice, IntelliSense is actually picking it up, right? So our development environment is already picking it up and it's giving us some hints as to what we should be doing. And it says, look, there's nothing really to do here. You just invoke it. So here's say hello, put a semicolon at the end. And if you hit save, then as the code is being recognized and it's being rendered top down, as it's being executed top down, we see that say hello is actually executing. Now, a common mistake that people will do is they'll do this. If you simply reference the function, you're not invoking it, you're not running it. It's weird, but this is a valid syntax. It doesn't really do anything. Because it just doesn't do anything. You can see that there's no message that pops up over here. So there's nothing going on. And so you might think, oh, well, there's no errors showing up here. There's no errors anywhere else. What is going wrong? If you intended to invoke it, you need to follow the end of the name with open close parentheses. So as soon as you hit save, you see that the hello world function is firing. Because here's the line that logged. If I click into the line that actually logged here, we'll see that it actually does come up here and say console.log. This is the line 30 that's executing. So this is how to declare a function. This is how you get it to execute it. Now, as I said, look, say hello has already run. I can tell that because hello world is already being displayed in the console, but I can do it again. Hit enter, and there it goes. So in a manner of speaking, again, say hello is a function that invokes the console log function. So you have a function that its sole purpose is to call another function. But we've actually passed in this message as well, so it's actually going to function that calls another function. You totally do that. That's part of software design. Because now I have my little tool that says hello. I can say hello as many times as I like. This undefined that you see here repeatedly is because the say hello function does not return anything. We'll talk about return statements in one of the next videos. Here I am going to execute say hello 3 times, and then you see say hello 3 times in the console. So inside of this console, you can do many, many different things. We'll go into what those things are as we get more involved into it. but this is the core of what it means to define a function. The keyword function, you give it a name, open close parentheses, and open close curly brackets. And in between the curly brackets there is where you put the function body, the actual instructions that you want to run every time the function is invoked, every time the function is executed, every time the function is called, or every time you run the function. Either one of those things is interchangeable. By the way, this is the first flavor of how to define a function. There's actually 3 main ways to define a function. We will also cover that in a separate video. We're going to focus now on some core functionality of what it is to be a function and how we're going to use the function before we get into the different flavors. You declare it with the keyword function. You give it a name. So if I wanted to have another function here, and let's just say I wanted a function that said, actually, whatever, yeah, let's just call it add. I'm going to call it add numbers. And my var result is equal to 5 plus 6. And naturally, I am only going to console log right now, keep things simple, the result. Here we go. So again, the 3 hello worlds come from the fact that I'm saying hello world. I'm executing say hello 3 times. Here are my 2 functions. Let me collapse them. One says hello, the other one adds numbers. Notice that in our graph, if I get rid of the developer tools, the graph has only picked up the function names. It has not picked up the variable declarations that are inside the function name, because those variables actually don't exist right now. They will exist, and this is now part of another topic of functions having to do with scope. But this is an illustration of how the variables that are defined and declared inside of the functions are not available to the global scope. So this graph and these illustrations that we've been working with throughout the course, this is a picture of global scope. It is a picture of the variables that are available to us from anywhere, globally. To understand globally better, you need to understand local, right? So there's global and local. So local variables are going to be variables that are declared inside of a particular code block. In this case, this variable is declared using the var keyword inside of the function block. You can see that they're not global because they're not visible here in the graph. That's a larger topic, again, that's going to be for another video. Before you leave here, make sure you write out a few different function declarations that do anything you like, and execute them either from here. Oh, I didn't add my numbers, right? So if I add my numbers, again, if I do that, here's an interesting thing. Let's look at this. That might look a little weird to you if I said add numbers. I hit up arrow and I say add numbers, right? So I hit enter and add numbers. Notice I didn't put the open close parentheses here. If I don't put the open close parentheses here, what the console thinks that you want is for it to spit out the actual function body, right? And if you click on it, it actually takes you to that function. I didn't want it to actually spit out the function body. I actually wanted to run that code, and because I wanted to run that code, I need to put the open close parentheses on it. And I hit enter, and that is what causes it to execute. Because those numbers are hard-coded, because this is always adding 5 and 6, I'm always going to get the same result. Hit up arrow, hit enter, and there is 11. Okay? Now, I could do that whenever I like. I'm going to say hello in between where I say hello and where I am adding numbers. I'm just going to alternate. So hello world, add. Hello world, add. All right, so make sure you practice this before you leave this video, because the next topic is an important topic that has to do with functions.